Hello, Anxiety Busters. Richard Brent here, co-founder of the Emotional Health Coach Academy and Anxiety Breakthrough Formula. I just wanted to put a short video together just to explain the connection between stress and anxiety and the vast array of different symptoms that we help people with. Let me share my screen a moment, and I will show you a list that is far from exhaustive. So this list here of symptoms that's published on our website, as you can see, it's fairly extensive, but it by no means includes all of the possible symptoms that we've been able to help people with over the years. What I would say is every symptom on here we have very successfully helped people with during that time frame. So you might think, well, wow, how are you helping people with all those different things? And the reason we're able to do that is because we understand the connection between stress and anxiety and our symptoms. So let me just come here to another um, page. I'll share this fairly rudimentary diagram of a pressure gauge, and this might explain things a little bit. So if my stresses and anxieties and pressures were in this green zone, that might be the normal day-to-day stuff that we have to cope with and deal with. It might be paying the mortgage, paying the rent, going to work, managing relationships, all these sort of normal things that we should want to get on and do. But as we're in the green zone here, everything's ticking along just fine. No real impact on our symptoms. What happens is, though, is as we approach the red zone and maybe end up in the red zone, at this moment in time, our psyche wants to do something about it because it knows that it's not a good idea to be in the red zone. It's a bit like if you had, a boiler at home and it was always on the red zone on the pressure gauge, you might think it's a bit of an issue. Or if you drove your car and you always had the rev counter in the red zone, again, probably not a good idea because at some point something will go wrong. So what happens is these stresses, anxieties, pressures build up. We end up either approaching the red zone or in the red zone, and our psyche wants to do something about it. It has to do something about it because being in the red zone, not a good idea. So what it does is it starts to try and release some of that stress and anxiety through our symptoms. Not very effectively, I might add, but this is what it's an attempt to do. So let's think about some of those symptoms as an example. Let's talk about some of the compulsive symptoms. That's a fairly, basic type of symptom that we would help people with, but it's a fairly basic way of understanding this kind of pressure gauge scenario. Because what happens with the compulsive symptoms, so by compulsive symptoms, just to give you some examples, this might be eating a bar of chocolate if I'm trying to lose weight. It might be eating too much. It might be smoking. It might be doing a line of cocaine. It might be drinking too much. It could even be something like gambling as well, which again is very compulsive behavior. So all of these behaviors are all compulsive behaviors, and they all have that one thing in common in terms of in that moment where I am stressed, these kind of behaviors make me feel better in that moment for a very short period of time. They do not take the stress and anxiety all the way back down to the green zone. They just take the edge off it a bit. Unfortunately, that doesn't last for very long, which is why it's not a very effective way to, for our psyche to manage anxiety. Because what happens is, let's say I've eaten a bar of chocolate and I was trying to lose some weight. 5 minutes later, I start giving myself a hard time over that. It doesn't take long before I'm back in the red zone, and this needle is back around to where it was previously. So this is just an example with a compulsive symptom, but you can start to relay this to all different types of symptoms. Some of them could be just out and out direct physical symptoms. So it might be a stress headache, so I might get palpitations and these sort of things. I might get, sweats and so on. So I might feel, particularly feel on the spot. So it could be even things like symptoms like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, where I get an upset stomach when I get stressed and anxious. Again, these would be direct physical symptoms. Again, the list of that is very, it's in its own right can be quite long, shall we say. Then there's other symptoms. So let's take something like fears and phobias. So not consciously, but subconsciously, again, it's an attempt by our psyche to try and grab the control back. So what happens is I start feeling stressed and anxious about something, and then my psyche tries to project it onto a situation, a specific thing that I might then go and build lots of beliefs around, but the focus being to avoid anything in relation to that fear or phobia. And by avoiding it, then I don't get stressed. But of course, That doesn't really work very effectively either, because sooner or later you are going to come across these things. And I don't think there's any coincidence that if you look at, the number of inquiries we get, they tend to be around phobias where there is um, they're having a significant impact on our life. So, I have I helped people with things like a phobia of dogs. Yes, I have, but it's not very many. Because if you've got a phobia of dogs, well, you just don't go around your friend's house that's got a dog. You come to yours, or you avoid going down the park, right? And you certainly don't have a dog as a pet. So that's quite an easy one for people to avoid. So therefore, it's not necessarily having a massive impact on their life. Therefore, it's only in extreme cases they might consult. However, there are other types of fears and phobias that do have a significant impact. So it could be something like a fear of flying, where that might be fine. You can avoid it for a period of time, but maybe you come under pressure from the family to, maybe they're sick of tired of going on a domestic holiday. Maybe they want to go abroad, right? So, you come under pressure to take a flight, or it could be work. Maybe work, at some point through work, they want you to travel and you've got to get on that airplane. Um, Other phobias, and probably one of the most common ones we get consulted for, is something called emetophobia. Emetophobia is a fear of being sick or people around you being sick. Um, the reason we get so many people consult for it's a lot more common than people realize, because people tend not to talk about it. But it's a phobia that has a dramatic effect on people's lives, because it's not one that you can escape. You know, you go into work, you might think, "Oh, my colleagues are looking a bit peaky. Are they 100%?" And all of a sudden your stress levels are through the roof. It might be that you put certain things off. So a lot of people put off, having kids, because they're worried about either morning sickness, or they're worried about when the kids are particularly quite young. They're often, germ factories, aren't they? They get ill and start vomiting. So all of these things, can be impacted by these phobias. The list there's no end to that list. And so really, this is why we have such a big effect on people's lives in terms of taking them through the formula and the program, is because the reason they're struggling and they're unable to break out of some of these symptoms is they are focused on the end result, which is the symptom. They're not focused on the drivers behind that. And all of those drivers will be stress and anxiety and pressure related. So by moving this needle back, we can help people resolve their symptoms. So stay tuned. We will do some more videos. I'll do some more symptom specific videos to dive into some of the symptoms a little bit more, a little bit deeper. And we'll also do another short video as well, which I hope to get out to you soon, on really explaining a bit more about how the program helps people and why it makes such a difference. So I'll leave you with that for the moment. Some food for thought in terms of, just the vast array of symptoms that we can really help people overcome. Many thanks. Bye.